Welcome back to Caracast, the podcast from Carasoft, the trusted government IT solutions provider. Subscribe to get the latest technology updates in the public sector. I'm Corey Baumgartner, your host from the Carasoft production team. On behalf of Carasoft, we would like to welcome you to today's podcast, focused around transforming technology in government. David Ettinger, CIO of the City and County of Denver, Dusty Dizelle, CISO of the City of Colorado Springs, Colorado, and Julia Richmond, Deputy Executive Director of the Colorado Governor's Office of Information Technology, will discuss insight on how agencies can enhance digital service delivery, increase workforce engagement and satisfaction, and enhance customer experience through modernizing technology.
First up, I'd like to welcome Julia Richmond, the Deputy Executive Director of the Governor's Office of Information Technology for the state of Colorado. And then joining Julia today is David Ettinger, the Chief Information Officer for the City and County of Denver. And also with Julia and Dave, we're pleased to have Dusty Dizelle, the Chief Information Security Officer for the City of Colorado Springs. Thanks, Dusty. So basically, as we start off, why don't each of you tell us just a little bit about yourselves share with our audience. Julia, we'll start with you.
Sure. Thanks for having me today. It's a pleasure to see you all, and good job getting out in the rain. So a little bit about me. I've been with the state since 2020. I joined the state because I was looking to reduce my commute, because before that I was the CIO and Innovation Officer for the City of Boulder, and I live in Denver. I joined February of 2020 and then stopped commuting anywhere. So my experience in the state started with being the Chief Strategy Officer for OIT, and really obviously, just like everyone else in this room in 2020 was focused on COVID response and implementation, but also began the journey that we'll talk about today, really transforming technology in the state. I became the deputy November of 2020 and have sort of pursued a broad agenda as part of my service to the state. I oversee all of the administrative operations of our agency and also all of our largest scale initiatives. So happy to be here today.
Oh, it's great to have you. It's going to be something. So you kind of bring in this perspective. You joined right when the COVID started. So you probably have some good stories to tell when you come up. Dave, how about you?
Yeah, hi, everybody. David Ettinger, City and County of Denver. I'm the CIO. I've been the CIO for the last 5 years. We're about 350 FTE and technology services, and a couple of them are here with me today, Chad Mitchell and Jenny Schiavone, who are on the next panel. I started, like I said, as CIO 5 years ago, but I can't believe I'm saying this. I've been with the city and county for 15 years, starting in public safety in the police department, doing a lot of stuff with data there, and then moving over to be the Chief Performance Officer for the 7 years previous to my current job. I've been in Denver for about 25 years and just seen a lot of change and really excited about what's on the table in terms of the possibilities with technology going forward.
Well, it's going to be great having you. I mean, you're bringing an experience of years. It's amazing how time flies, right? 42 years federal service. When I left, I was like, geez, it seems like I joined yesterday. So it's amazing. Believe me, the first 10 years grind. Okay. It's after that it just sort of goes before you know it. Dusty, how about you?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dusty Dizelle. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for the City of Colorado Springs. I'm a third generation Air Force vet. My boys are carrying on the family tradition. They're both active duty Air Force stationed abroad today. When I was done with the Air Force, I transitioned and I didn't go far. I crossed the street and became a defense contractor, working down there at Peterson Air Force Base, now Peterson Space Force Base. During that time, I worked in Air Force Space Command. And then when NORAD US Northcom stood up, I transitioned over there and joined that mission. I really enjoyed it. It was a fun job. And then in 2013, I just needed a change. And so I left the federal service and I went to the local service and joined the City of Colorado Springs. So as I entered into the city, I was focused on setting up an ITSM, IT service management program for the city. Did that for a couple of years. And then there was an opportunity to stand up a cybersecurity capability for the City of Colorado Springs. Jumped on that opportunity, and that's where I've been ever since.
That's amazing, Dusty. I mean, you've had almost as many positions as I had, except you haven't had to move all over the world to go to them, right?
State of Colorado.
How lucky. What a fantastic experience. Well, thanks to all of you for joining us today. Initially, I'm going to address my questions to one of you. Okay, but I would ask, when we get a question, if anybody has an idea or something that you want to join in or a point you want to make, hop right in, pile on top of them, interrupt. go for it. This is a conversation back and forth with us. And I know if anybody's like me, if I wait for 15 seconds, I'll lose my train of thought and we won't know what's going on, which is telling all of you guys what this is going to be like today. A lot of fun. So Julie, let's kick things off with you. Now, I understand the governor's office of information technology actually interviewed literally thousands of stakeholders, met with residents from across the state, surveyed and met with community organizations and local governments while developing the Colorado government digital strategic plan. So why don't you talk to us about the 3 North Star goals of the plan and the tangible benefits that you expect Coloradians to see?
Sure. So yeah, the digital government strategic plan effort was one we undertook last summer. Particularly excited about the engagement that we did that you mentioned leading up to the development of that plan. We engaged over 2,000 Coloradans in understanding their experience with digital government. It may come as no surprise to anyone in this room that people who identify as non-white, non-male in non-urban areas have a lower experience of government in Colorado. I know it's a shock. And also those are folks that typically need and demand services from government in a higher level than other folks. And so what we learned from that survey was that, we needed to set our aspirations high and that we wanted to really aim to make a difference. What we did not hear from constituents that we engaged was that they were excited about the next blockchain solution for government. What we heard is that they wanted forms to be easier, services to be more accessible, and to not have to navigate the alphabet soup of government in order to get services. So we set our aspirations around 3 goals. The first being expand broadband access. It doesn't matter if you provide government services on the internet if they cannot access the internet. And so really expanding that access to at least 99% of Coloradans, and with the broadband funding coming down from the Fed, we should be able to really get close to that goal. The second is make government easy, and you cannot do a digital government strategic plan without having an aspiration to make government easy. So it's pretty self-fulfilling in that way. But the goal there is really thinking about, reducing the burden of access for constituents. And then the last is really focused on reducing poverty. And so, for us as technologists, our goal is to make access possible. And through that access, people getting the benefits that they're already entitled to and already eligible for. And so really thinking differently about how we do that and the ways that we can impact people's lives, not through novel technologies, but really thinking critically about, how services are provided and to whom.
Those are fabulous goals. And the thing is, they're really, if you think about it, you're looking at it, those are goals for the people. They're not, it's your goals, but they're goals that are going to support and help the Coloradans of the state that are out there. But I mean, the number of people that you had to, and entities that you had to get information from, what are some of the insightful methods for gathering and digesting the massive amount of data that went into making Colorado's digital strategic plan?
Yeah, so the surveying was ironically an online survey, which was a strange method considering we were looking at people's access to government services online. We also did, journey mapping of residents. We did digital diaries from residents. We engaged with state and local and regional governments through surveys, nonprofit organizations, and those who sort of are secondary providers of state services through surveys and interviews. And so it was a very, wide-ranging, robust approach to sort of sampling and understanding what people needed and what they were getting.
Well, I know what I read about it. I mean, it was a massive undertaking to gather all this information and bring it in. And you were actually able to get out, and you mentioned it, the regional and local governments, as well as the nonprofit organizations that you work with. That's bringing the information in where it needs to come from. So you're going to be able to provide the services that you need to the folks that need them, as you were saying. Super.
Hey, Mike, can I jump in?
Yeah,
really quick?
go for it.
Really, I swear it's a softball question.
That's all right.
So when you were talking about the second one, which is make government easy, I was thinking about the My Colorado app and how that's made my life easier because I've got my COVID vaccine card in there. I've got my vehicle registrations in there. I'm still a little worried that one of these days a cop is going to pull me over and I'm going to show them my Colorado driver's license and they're going to say that doesn't count, but I've got that in there. And just all this great, like sort of documentation in one place, easily accessible. That seems like it's making government easier, but I was curious about the adoption of that tool. And if you know about, like, are people using it throughout the state
Yeah.
and where and how are they using it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And thank you for a softball. Yeah, so we have over 1 million users on the My Colorado app. We add about 1,000 users a day and have for about 18 months. So it's an incredible adoption rate. We get about 40,000 uses a month. And so there's the user and the use, right? And so people actually do use it. And those that use it frequently. I think the paradigm that we're facing in the future is that, we've got a few functionalities like licensing, permitting. You can get your hunting license, your fishing license, a lot related to your driver experience. And as we expand those services, right, not having that replicate the org chart of government, I think it's going to be a really challenging one. And so how you navigate services, if there are hundreds on there, is going to be a really interesting thing for us to tackle.
Yeah, that is the age-old question. How do we serve up the information citizens need, not by giving them our bureaucracy as the starting point and having them navigate
Absolutely.
all of our departments, bureaus, whatever it is. Yeah.
That's right.
Well, a really neat thing, I mean, with the EDM generation that's here, this is the kind of thing that they're going to be expecting to use. And so your infrastructure, now you're looking at your infrastructure and the support structure when folks, because as the word gets out, and again, that's why Colorado is one of the top 10, on there, is that people are going to start using it. And now you're looking at your infrastructure that's going to have to actually support, like you said, it's the number of people registered and the number of users. Okay, when they actually start using it, when they get to thing, go, oh crud, I don't have to carry a suitcase with me with all my, hunting and fishing and drivers and COVID cards. I can just have it all right here on my cell phone. Okay, now that's when the infrastructure is going to come in, and that's what you're preparing for, right? Mm-hmm. That's outstanding. So Dave, your turn now, since you threw an easy one over to Julia. I can give you a hard one. Change and increased needs seem to be the only constants in today's world. Really. So workloads are ever increasing and requirements from new and unexpected sources are creating backlogs that are becoming critical. So what are some examples from the city and county of Denver of these unexpected requirements? One, okay, and how are innovation and modernization efforts helping to alleviate the strain? I mean, have you been able to observe also their impact on enhancing your mission effectiveness?
Yeah, wow, there's a lot to unpack with that question, but I would start with saying, we have sort of the basic government, local government, KTLO, or keep the lights on kinds of work that we have to do. We have to pick up the trash, we have to patrol the streets, we have to do restaurant inspections, et cetera, et cetera. But then we have, as you mentioned, new and unplanned types of demand that's coming in. Seems like at a more rapid pace than has been so in the past. I'll give some examples. So a new but planned was volume-based pricing, or pay as you throw. So we are now doing solid waste collection weekly, and it includes for every resident, every household, 3 different types of bins, and green, black, and purple for recycling, compost, and regular trash. And that has put an incredible burden that we planned on the table in terms of what we have to do to get that done. And there's a lot that goes on technically, but if you just think about 311, so 311 is the non-emergency number you call to get through to, get your questions answered. The volume, we launched volume-based pricing in January. The volume at 311 has gone up 40%, right? Just overnight. That's how many people have questions about how this works and why their bill's wrong, and how do they get the smaller cart because they want to pay $9, not $13, and just all this complexity that we introduced into the equation. And now that keep the lights on type of operation just went from 50,000 calls a month to 70,000 calls, or contacts, I should say, per month. So that's an example of a planned challenge. An unplanned challenge that we're dealing with, you could look at the Housing Affordability Fund. 5 years ago, that was 25 million. Now it's 250 million.
Wow.
So you got to come up with that money from somewhere if you're going to put that kind of money to subsidize housing in the city and county of Denver. And another example is happening today. We activated the Emergency Operations Center because we are having so many migrants come in from the southern border that we have to shelter them and do a lot of other activities. That's going to cost approximately $1 million a week to do when all is said and done. That's bigger than the size of our contingency fund in our budget. So we're facing those types of challenges, new and unplanned. And the question is, how can we use technology and innovation to get better fast enough to do that. There are some areas where we've seen, just to go back to 311 as an example, good improvement. So for example, when we launched live chat, which is when an agent is typing, it's not a bot, it's an agent actually typing answers from 311, they can get about 3 contacts done in the time it would take them to do 2 if they were on the phone. So that's pretty good. That's a 50% productivity boost right there. But it's not the exponential kind of boost we're, I think, going to need. If you look at examples like, just AI, just generally speaking, there are good ways where we could get that kind of exponential productivity boost. So we could see, for example, an email comes in and it's lengthy and it's irritable and it wants a certain service, and it's going to take that agent about 2 minutes to read it. AI could boil that down to a 10-second read. Person's pissed off. You need to call them back today. They've called 5 times. Here's the link they need to get the hot water heater permit that they're looking for, and just condense that from a 2-minute read to a 10-second read. And that's where we get the exponential payoff. And that's how we keep the lights on with the basic government operations while we're facing all this new stuff coming in.
So Dave, you mentioned AI, and that's really because I was gonna bring that up also. AI modeling is huge in doing that, and maybe taking the examples from other cities and resources or states that have done it. Maybe getting in to share that, because you're right. The bot AI driven bots systems that are in there are one of the ways that can sort of filter through what goes to the online caller itself. And like you said, filter down. When you filter a 2-minute conversation down to 10-second read, that's like, yeah, okay, that's worth the price that you're gonna pay for it. So have you already seen that in effect, or is that something that you're now implementing at this point?
Yeah, to stay on that example, I think we're right on the verge of it. So, a year ago, we're talking about chatbots, and we're talking about it in a way where we're saying, okay, we got to have really good knowledge base articles, because the chatbot's going to have to use the same resource that the live human agent uses, in the same way that the agent uses it to get the response back to the person. So you're not seeing really a boost you're just offloading that human work onto a computer. But now we're seeing ways with what's coming out with AI, and we just saw a great demo the other day up in the city of Bellevue, Washington, about this, of just compacting the work down, almost like an executive assistant, like an executive summary, executive assistant kind of a function, so that the people can do the work that's really transformational, that builds the sort of trust in government, that gets the people what they want really quickly. And you're letting all that workload that doesn't need to be done by people get offloaded somewhere else. And I think, if you're just looking across local governments in general, what you'd see is everywhere you see a backlog is a huge opportunity for this kind of thing.
Right.
So backlogs meaning wait times while you wait on hold at 311. Backlogs of parole officers going out and doing the work that they do, or investigators, detectives in Denver Police Department being able to get down their caseloads to such a place that they can manage them more effectively and have better outcomes as a result of that kind of stuff. We're really, this hype cycle around AI is no joke, in my opinion. It's not like 5G and self-driving cars and all this other stuff. This one really, I think, will pay off, because we're seeing the stuff implemented every day in other cities that we can just adapt.
Well, none of that, the Coloradans are actually seeing the impact, and they're seeing the benefits for themselves that are in there. And that's gonna basically drive the train there to give you the resources to be able to do it, because they're actually seeing they're reaping the benefits from what's going in. And you hit on what I said right there, is that, why invent the system yourself when it's already out there? Why not learn from somebody else? I'm one of these people in my career. Okay. I was lazy, guys. I'm sorry. If somebody else has already done it, why should I redo it? I mean, let's learn from them and let's do it. And that sounds like what you're doing. It's fantastic. Dusty?
Can I add on to that? And Dave, I don't know if it's a question or a statement kind of thing. So I agree with you. I think AI is going to make massive improvements from that big program perspective, for the examples that you gave. What's your thought on the more personalized use of AI in the workforce, using something like ChatGPT or the Microsoft and Google's? We're starting to talk about it a lot at City now. Is there that concern that if we allow those to be used in the execution of government work, that there's a higher risk of some sort of breach, privacy information or information that just shouldn't be generally known publicly. Do you have a concern about that and any ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. And, like with a lot of things, I'd probably start using it in, let's say, the animal shelter before I used it in the jail. Right? So you got to think about what the downside impact to some of this stuff is and test it out in places that make sense. And that's one of the advantages, I think, of government, is that we've got such a broad spectrum of services that we can kind of pick and choose and say, we could probably use this in the Denver Motor Vehicles Department. Probably don't want to use it right out of the gate. I probably chose a poor example with a parole officer or something like that. But eventually you might get to a place where that high intensity human interaction kind of stuff is the place you feel confident using it if you can get out in front of it. I think the worst thing we could do would be, do the ostrich route of putting our head in the sand and pretending like it's not out there and not learning when we have the chance to learn along the way, despite all the potential risks that you.
For sure. Great answer. Our concern is that we have people that are really leaning forward and want to do improvement on how they work every day. But I don't know how many of you experience it, but our experience is many of our customers want that instant gratification. So they don't always read the end user license agreement. They don't understand what they're agreeing to when they start to use it. And so we're starting to try to understand how to make sure we're communicating to our workforce the appropriate use of AI.
Right.
Well, the neat thing about AI is that when you're bleeding it in, when you're bringing it in, okay, unlike machine language, it actually learns. And you have the capability for it to self-teach as going through. And those are the parameters that you can throw in there of the privacy information, privacy protection, and things like that. But you're absolutely right. Start off with something easy and build it up to something that's trustworthy that's going in there. So Dusty, you spoke up. Let's go back to you. The IT environment has radically changed as an outcome of the COVID-19 pandemic. So what are some of the most significant changes that you've seen during this period? And will this pace of change actually continue that we're seeing?
So I think it's a couple of examples. The first one that is just that behavioral change, right? It's the way that city government interacts with its citizens and how they get access to information. Before, they were walking to the administration building, had face-to-face communications, and now everybody wants it to be digital. It wants to be online. They don't want the inconvenience of having come to the city to get what they need, right? So we really focused on the rapid implementation of technology, enhancing technology that we already had. We put a lot of work into our Excel platform so that workflows that went across multiple departments, like permits, business licenses, were sped up, saved us time, saved the citizens time. And then much like the Colorado app, we have the Go COS app. That gives a lot of information to the citizens 24 hours a day at their fingertips. And we've got a lot of good reviews. I don't necessarily have the statistics on how much is being used, but we're getting a lot of good positive feedback about its use.
Well, the neat thing about that is you mentioned something that I think is really significant here. And a lot don't realize the departments and the other folks, when they're standing these things up, is reaching across departments. Okay. Things that like licenses, permits, things like that you have to have interaction amongst multiple departments that are in there, or even multiple agencies. So it kind of, I'm sorry, bing, light bulb goes off. Interoperability, okay, amongst those agencies, interoperability amongst the departments, interoperability. Do you see that? I mean, isn't that something that I guess that's a big part of what we're doing? What do you guys think?
Oh, absolutely. It's lots of communication to get the departments to understand that we have these capabilities that we can.
But also to get them to work together. In other words, and that's sometimes that's like pulling teeth. It's like, no, it's mine. I'm not going to share it with you. I did this, mine. But I see, and especially every dark cloud has its silver lining. The COVID, the pandemic. I see that so much less now than pre-COVID. I see more of the willingness to reach out and to share and to just give the information and the capabilities and the methods of doing something in order to be interoperable so that everybody wins from that situation. Are you seeing that?
Yeah.
Lots of communication. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that. So I think that, interoperability across departments is probably the consummate challenge in government. I think, at the root of every problem is our ability to share resources across agencies and to understand that, my unique special snowflake capability is actually pretty similar to yours. And really getting to the sort of root business. And then driving, how we pay for projects that create interoperability. A lot, since we're at a Fed Insider event, I'll say a lot of federal funding drives, the inability to share. And I think it remains to be seen sort of that executive order from the Biden administration about user experience and interoperability, mirroring that with how funding flows is really a crucial thing. At the end of the day, it's a real culture challenge more than anything else, right? Most of the problems we deal with are not technology problems. They're people problems. And so getting that coordination, getting that alignment, and then really, at the sort of root of it is I gathered data and Dave gathered data and Dusty gathered data, and we kind of gathered the same data, but we called it different things, right? And so there's a lot of just basic work to do to sort of get that interoperability to work, mechanically speaking. And I think that is, certainly something that we're tackling. It's part of our digital government strategic plan. And I think people are really starting to now understand sort of how valuable that can be and the real work that's required there. So we're definitely seeing that and working on it.
Fantastic points. And, the thing is, you mentioned the federal grant program that's out there and what was going on with the Biden administration on that and helping the states as well as the local and regional governments in that. And part of that is this, the states have to submit the packages for that on behalf of the state and regional and local governments that are in there. So that kind of, and a lot of the states are getting together and sharing how to submit those packages and things like that. So that really is, I think, in leaps and bounds, helping the idea of interoperability across agencies. I mean, a classic example in federal government is it's a classification system. Your clearances. Okay. What does it mean in each agency or each department and law enforcement? Totally different. If we ever get our heads around that, I think we'll solve the whole problem of interoperability that's out there. So, Julia, we're going to stick with you. What are some of the, and we're talking about policies and best practices. What are some of the standout innovative policy and best practice changes that Colorado has made in implementing changes brought about by the pandemic and its recovery? And then what effect have you seen from them?
Yeah, so certainly My Colorado is an incredible use case for us in terms of, adoption of digital government services. Prior to the pandemic, we had about 40,000 users. And so to go from 40 to over 1 million in less than 2 years is an incredible jump. It also provides us, the platform to really do digital government well. But at the end of the day, right, we have to continue to build trust with constituents that their problem can be solved through a digital mean. What we saw in our digital government strategic plan is that about 20% of residents still prefer to engage in person. And so we have to always think about, multiple modes and enabling people to solve the problems that they want to solve in the way that they want to solve them. So I think that's a really crucial thing. And so the end user support, constituent, frontline services, the kind of 311 capability is certainly something that we're beginning to get our arms around and thinking about. So My Colorado provides, the platform for us to be able to do that. The other thing that I think the pandemic uncovered, and, this is not a novel statement, but just the art of the possible, right? We knew we could provide services online because we did that. And we had to do that, and constituents could not come into the office and they could not wait in a line. And so, just that art of the possible also helped our leaders, agency leaders really understand, what they needed to do to make things work better in the future, right? So it gave us a platform for that change. The last thing I'll say is that from, our own agency management, we've got about 1,000 employees, and we transitioned to permanently full-time remote for about 95% of our workers. And that, we still have data centers and people have to go in and look at the blinky lights. But for, most of the jobs that we have, you can work anywhere in Colorado. And so that, is a foundational culture change. It shifts the burden of trust to our employees to deliver on what's being asked of them as opposed to what I can see. It allows us to recruit all over the state and provides a really incredible, economic development opportunity for us. In our executive team of about 8 folks, we've got someone that lives in Eagle County, someone that lives in Fremont County, Douglas County, Denver, right? We're able, therefore, to just have the best talent. And we are seeing our attrition, voluntary attrition, less than 1% right now. And so for the comparison, many agencies are seeing 25%, 10%, and so it's an incredibly low number. And for us, that is foundational to our future. And so it was certainly transformative because of the pandemic, but we really leaned into that.
That's absolutely phenomenal. When you think about it, especially in the area of cybersecurity and information security professionals that are out there. It's hard to get. And moving to a 95% permanent remote work capability. I mean, and you mentioned a 1%. That's phenomenal. What a great smart move to do that, and to be able to keep doing it is what's really important, and that's going to keep your talent where it needs to be, as well as hey, I'll sign up. I mean, geez, you work from anywhere. That's fantastic. So thanks for sharing that. So Dave, got to come back to you now. The citizens attached to services from any number of ways and from everywhere imaginable right now. So what innovative and technical solutions have you implemented to make that access from the edge easier, more transparent, and even more secure for the users?
Yeah.
And you.
Yeah, two parts of that question, or two parts of the answer here. I guess the first thing is, we created something called PocketGov, and then we merged PocketGov into our overall website just recently. And that does provide citizens with a lot of digital tools that they can use to sign up for street sweeping alerts, so that they know when we're going to do the street sweeping on their block, where they park their car, so they can move their car before they get a ticket. You can get your solid waste reminders. You can do all sorts of different things that just help you, based on your location, get an individualized, personalized experience that works for you. You sign up for what you want. You don't sign up for what you don't want. And all of that seems to help, and has a lot of interest from our population. And it's usually, case by case. So I might be interested in 2 of the services, none of the others. Somebody else might want, 15 of those types of things. And that's helpful, allows them to work on the edge, so to speak. But I think the bigger achievement, back to your sort of workforce example, Julia, is what we were able to do during the pandemic to get out of that, we use Skype, but we barely know how to use it kind of mode, to we're fully comfortable being remote. And now we can move into probably the harder transition, is this hybrid mode that we're in today, where we have to work sometimes on and sometimes off site. But what I think that does is allows us, for example, to create a fully remote 311, so that the agents aren't impacted by the thing that is going to cause a lot of calls. So in the past, we had to close down 311 when there was a big snowstorm, and everybody wanted to call into 311 to report branches down, other issues like that, that were not emergency in nature, and nobody was there to take their calls because the agents couldn't get where they needed to go. So now you have a workforce that can come and go as needed, can work from wherever. A good example is today we activated the one of the main city facilities today for the migrant situation, to take that as a reception center for them. We told every employee in that building, don't come in tomorrow. We told them that yesterday. Everybody's working from home. The place is empty, other than the workers who have to be there to serve that population. Everybody else is just working from home. It was seamless. It was no big deal whatsoever. When there's a snow day, everybody just knows, yeah, I'm just working from home today to take care of the citizens of Denver. That's how it's going to work. And even this example, like I'm actually the information section chief of the emergency operations center today, and I was able to just step away, because I could have somebody else step in for me for the meeting that's happening at 1:30 without having to go anywhere and be anywhere to do that. And I could come over here and do this.
It's a great idea. This is a lot better than a meeting at 1:30.
It is much better.
Just my thoughts,
But just so much more flexibility in the actual workforce, I think, translates into so much better customer service. Because why would you close your government on the days when they need you the most?
And those services, I mean, that's pretty neat. Although I kind of miss the snow days where I got to stay home and watch, old flicks and stuff like that. That's the only bad thing about it. But I mean, and you were talking, Julia, about My Colorado. Now you're talking about PocketGov. Okay. And those things combining, you see a trend going here, which is really phenomenal. It's making services easier for the Coloradans. And that's out there, and you're talking about the response that you're getting from it. That's absolutely amazing. That's great news. Good stuff. Dusty, I see you
jump on that topic of the remote workforce and ask more of a technical question or a tactical question. Mm-hmm. So remote workforce, everybody likes it, right? And everybody is a bit different. The city isn't quite ready to allow that full workforce work from remote from home. But one of the things that we have seen, I'm interested to hear what you guys might have put in place from an administrative policy perspective, is how to combat that distracted listening. So we have people that are joining through those virtual meetings, And how is it that we can get people to be aware that they don't fall victim to that distraction, answering another email or reading another document, responding to a chat. And what we've seen is we just started to see this. It's always been there, but it's been this steady rise of distracted listening and now we're starting to hear a lot of grumblings from people that they're just not being communicated, or they didn't hear this was happening or that was happening. And I can guarantee you, we have plenty of meetings, so I know that we're getting the message out, but I think people are just really starting to fall victim to that distracted listening. What kind of policies have you guys put in place to try to curb that or make people more aware that they're falling victim to it?
Sounds like he was asking you, Julia.
Oh, sure. Yeah. We do not have a policy on that. I might argue it was happening before we were on virtual meetings. I can imagine, the number of meetings I had where people were just on their cell phones doing their emails. So it's maybe just a more secretive way of doing it. What I will say is that we have spent a lot of time talking about and thinking about our meeting hygiene. I think in the pandemic, right, it was sort of this like over indexing on like everybody should be together. Like we can't possibly, get anything done if we don't meet about it. And, it's a very government habit in general. And really thinking about like who's in the meeting, what's the meeting for, how often do we have it? I was reading an article recently about maybe it's like Adobe or DocuSign or something, looked at all their meetings. And if it was a meeting with more than 2 people that was recurring, they canceled it. And so some interesting things to think about, like maybe the meeting is not useful for people, which is why they're not listening. And really doing that. So, just last week we rearranged, one of the meetings that we have with our executive team, a stand-up meeting. It was a 15-minute meeting, right? We had an hour meeting to talk about canceling a 15-minute meeting, but in the end we canceled it because we realized like we could do an email, right? And so I think that that's really just figuring out the cadence of work. So not a wise answer, but it's something that we're.
Julie, I think it's a good answer because let's see a show of hands. How many of you folks before the pandemic or whatever would always complain, why the hell did I just spend an hour and a half or an hour or 2 hours at a meeting that could have been covered by an email that I could read in 5 minutes? I mean, let's see a show of hands. Exactly. Bingo. Now, post-pandemic, here we are. You guys have the answer. And I mean, and to be honest with you, Dusty, I mean, you would not have any idea how many meetings that I attended, even as a senior executive, where I had to go in with some politician sitting in there giving a meeting, and nothing against politicians, but that my eyes just sort of glazed over. And yes, I'm sitting there in the meeting watching, but my thoughts are somewhere out in the ether, 100 miles away. So we're just seeing the same thing now. But I think actually, I think we're much more productive in those meetings because they're engaged in this and doing this, but then boom, something clicks, they hear something, they click and they're automatically re-engaged in and going back in. That would be my thought.
Yeah, let me just jump in there.
Go ahead.
One of the other things, everything Julia said makes a lot of sense and mirrors a lot of what we've done. But I think we had a false belief pre-pandemic that the cheeks and seats approach to management was really working well. See them there sitting in that chair, they must really be working hard. And so performance management was just awful, right? There was really very little management of performance going on. And so now in this new hybrid environment, we can place the premium where it should be in terms of what's being produced, what's getting done, what are the customer satisfaction rates, et cetera, because we can't rely on that false premise that, just because I can see them over there in the cubicle, they must be working hard. And then the other part is just, and this is tough, is changing that culture of, meetings equal work. And, people think that. And one of the ways we've done that to sort of, Dusty, is to sort of add up the cost in the room. Every time we meet, we say, oh yeah, this hour is going to cost the city taxpayers a couple $1,000. Does everybody need to be here for that? And and just really trying to reinforce, if you're not going to be engaged, if you're not going to participate, have something to say, move the agenda forward, you don't need to be here. Go get some work done.
It's a really good point. We're trying to get people to stop inviting the entire department to a meeting, and only those that need to purpose.
So we use that. I don't know. I think the tool is called Viva now. I get changed a couple of times, but the one that tells you like how much of your time did you spend in meetings in the last week? And personally, I've been able to drop that from about 70% down to under 40. And that's, a bellwether for me of, am I spending too much time in meetings versus getting stuff done?
Absolutely.
Well, fabulous. What a great conversation. But let's just go ahead and continue on this thought. I mean, we've talked about, okay, what's here? What are the neat tools that we're using now? What's surfaced in the past couple of years? I mean, what new capability do you envision for the future? What's right there? What's about to come around, David?
I knew you were going to go to me first.
Yeah.
Well, I'll come back to that sort of idea of everything with a backlog, right? So we have got it, this idea that, well, let's start with the culture of government, which is It's better to be slow and late than it is to end up in the paper for doing something wrong. In other words, the premium is on, don't make a mistake that ends up putting you on the front page of the Denver Post.
Right.
So changing that culture around and getting folks focused on what the customers actually want, in addition to breaking down the government silos and helping people navigate through that, requires that to happen. So when you think of the sort of the mother of all bad government processes, which is permitting, and the bigger the project, the harder the permit's going to be, because you got to involve more agencies. You got a big development project you're doing. You're going to need the fire department. You're going to need excise and licenses. You're going to need maybe parks and rec in terms of what you'd have to do to put in enough open space in your development. It just goes on and on and on, right? And so in each of those departments isn't thinking about how to serve the customer necessarily quickly. It's how do we make sure nothing goes wrong and later this building doesn't collapse and kill some people, which is a good thing
Right.
to be thinking about, and quality matters. But if the only thing you're thinking about is making sure it's done right, what you end up seeing in that particular process, which is just a great case study of all things that are broken in government, right, is you'll see something like a review will be done on a plan. And then these three things pointed out that the developer has to fix. They'll fix those three things, resubmit it, and they'll say, I got three more things that I found when I re-reviewed it. And they'll hand it back to the developer. And every time they do that, they're adding 6 more weeks to the process.
Right.
And that costs the developer money and ultimately costs a lot of things money. So when you see like the average cost of a dwelling unit in Denver at whatever crazy number it is right now, that's part of the reason is that we're, building up those costs. So we're facing an housing affordability problem on one hand, and yet we're doing things that are driving up the cost of housing on the other. And so changing that mentality is a big part of it, which is why it probably isn't always about technology, but it could be about technology if we could, for example, develop systems that allowed people to navigate the permitting process similar to how I'd use TurboTax to do my taxes, right? I don't really know what the 1040 looks like anymore because I'm just keying in data and getting that thing through the system as quickly as possible and then getting to the endpoint fast. So coming up with things like that through technology to help circumvent the way we've established governments over the years, I think will be helpful in getting some of this improvement done, which again has to tie back to an outcome we care about, in this case, affordable housing.
So, you mentioned this, and Julia, you mentioned earlier that a lot of this is social and human factors involved, not necessarily the technology. Am I kind of seeing, am I envisioning the future being technology helping shape the human factor, helping drive the human factor? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think, and David brought up a use case that's near and dear to my heart. I waited for the city almost a year to process the permit for my house that I'm building. So I'm like, having a little bit of flush right now. But the thing that I think is a technology solution to an incredibly hard problem is one of identity. And that is something that we are pretty laser focused on at the state. So My Colorado is an app that is an actual manifestation of your identity, your driver's license. And extracting that use case to something that allows you to authenticate yourself to the state and reduce the burden of a user to tell you their tax information, prove to you that they have a job, because we know all of that information already. You pay your taxes, you have a W-2, right? All those things that sort of go along with your interaction with government are data points that we already know. And so allowing technology to solve a problem of the user identity for us is sort of the next frontier. And while we have this small use case in My Colorado, which is your digital ID, really thinking differently about identity in general for us is the next paradigm. And part of that poverty reduction can be solved with reducing the amount of times and the amount of information somebody needs to provide to the state, engage with the state in order to get their services. So that's the first thing. And then kind of going back to this, regenerative AI question. One of the things that's sort of top of mind for me is, we are having conversations about ChatGPT and how do we use that? And, employees want to engage with technology. So that's great. We're trying to get them to engage with technology, but, the kinds of sensitive information or systems that they use and then are, plugging into a tool that's open is not acceptable. So we're sort of balancing that. But the opportunity to use AI to actually refactor and reprogram our systems is something that I think is really a next frontier for us. We're spending a lot of time looking at technology debt in the state. We estimate that we've got somewhere between $460 and $700 million worth of technology debt. And, paying that down is an endless quest. And, if we've got 3,000 systems and 2,000 of them are considered to be technology debt, we will never live long enough in order to replace all of those systems. But having a computer replace them and refactor them without human intervention is really an opportunity that sort of blows my mind. And so, we're having conversations about, can we use AI to serve constituents? But I think thinking differently about how we could use that to actually improve the operations of government internally is a really interesting frontier.
It's a two-pronged approach, and it really is, or bi-directional approach is where you have to come in, not just from the user, but from the infrastructure side, from the inside out, as well as from the outside in, utilizing the great ideas. Dusty, you want to pile on?
I think AI is the wave of the future. It's here to stay. It's going to impact everything that we do going forward. I don't have the insights that the two of you do that really, really great. Mine's putting that CISO hat on, right?
Right, exactly.
Technology is coming. AI is going to be great, but AI also terrifies me. I think there's going to be some seismic events caused or brought upon governments with the use of AI, and I don't know that we're ready for what's coming from an AI perspective.
Well, also though, AI can help from the information security side of the house too, in a big way. We've already seen some of the benefits of AI in information security. It's deep learning that kind of concerns me. When we get to deep learning, now we're going to have where it starts making its own decisions, and we allow that. That's where we could have, I think, some of the seismic events that you're talking about. But let's continue with you, Dusty. So the one of Colorado's principal strategies for improving resident services is to, quote, prioritize modern, high quality enterprise services. So what has surfaced for you as critical when providing applications and services for, in your case, Colorado Springs residents, but Colorado's residents?
Well, I believe the approach that we take is we want to try to focus on a few quality services, and very, very cautious of falling into the trap of technology sprawl. That technology sprawl simply just adds to your cost, your complexity, and at some point it's going to make your tech debt management much more challenging, like you were talking about earlier. So I think focusing on those few key quality apps allows us to have better communications with our customers across multiple departments and get them to understand how we can take their independent processes and put them into one. The things that they are doing, same process for a permit or a business license, where we might have to have 3 or 4 departments do something, they can all do it together in one location now. And so that's really where our focus is going to be. And I think that also with that centralized system, it gives the city the ability to answer the mail and do faster service delivery, which I think is something that we're all shooting for in today's fast-paced environment.
Yep. Well, service delivery and faster service delivery for the Coloradans. I mean, that's what we've all been talking about today, and that's really what we're seeing with these capabilities. Julie, you want to add, pile in on that one?
I think that's it. Sprawl is a really interesting term for it. I think, as we're talking about tech debt and trying to reduce our, portfolio of technology debt, we're also introducing more tech debt. And, what makes government really interesting is that even if you want a, standard system, you have politics that come in, and particularly at the state level, right? A legislator wants a particular field that describes a particular thing and does a particular function. And, it's like, well, that's not in this, the system I can buy off the rack. And so you end up with this really weird interaction of politics and systems that drives, the additional creation of tech debt, whether it's well-intentioned and has a good effect or not. But, it's something that we are talking about a lot is, we have sprawl, and how do we reduce the rate of creation of sprawl and really manage that.
The complexity too. I mean, you're bringing that up. I mean, the complexity that can be built into the system based upon the best of intentions. Some of the worst things in the world have happened with the best of intentions that are out there. And what we want to avoid is that one-off. That how many times have you guys I've been there, the folks that are system administrators or CIOs or CISOs, where for the best of intentions, somebody else in the organization ran off and developed this system or bought this system and brought it in. Okay. And then, like you have no idea it's there. Like, a year and a half later, they come to you and say, my IT's broke, you've got to fix it. Like, where did that come from? It's like, that's what we want to avoid. We want to avoid IT for IT's sake, technology for technology's sake, but that's also where the Colorado strategic plan, IT strategic plan, came into play. That's why it's so important to have a plan, and you can't be nose down into the plan, but semi follow that plan with some idea of interoperability in order to get to the end zone that's on there. So that's fabulous. So for everyone, okay, this is kind of a just take this and go wherever you want to with it. So how has the pandemic, okay, and our emergence from it influenced your vision of the future and then driven innovation for IT for you? Who wants to go first on that? I'll just throw it out there.
I'll take a stab at it.
Go for it, Dusty. All right.
I know we're like,
So I don't know how the rest of you feel, but to me, as we started to come out of the pandemic, it seems like time got stuck on fast forward and forgot to slow down at all, right? And so it's something that we have to adapt to. And I think most of us are doing a really good job at adapting to it. To succeed going forward, I believe that the term that we throw around a lot of times, automation, needs to be more and more of our conversation. And we have to automate. It's conversations with your departments, conversations with your business processors, business customers, to understand some of those low-hanging fruit that you can put into automation right away. And I think some of that with our business customers is needed so that they can see the value. I think a lot of times IT talks about the automation, the business doesn't really grab onto it. And so you need some of those quick wins so that they can see the values, that they buy into it. And then I don't think that the automation conversation is going to continue just as automation. As we were talking earlier, I think automation is going to be combined with AI going forward. I don't think that you're going to be able to do the amount of automation that we're talking about on scale without bringing AI into the picture as well.
Yeah. I would say, that before the pandemic, people probably thought about technology in the IT department as something that was a separate department that wasn't foundational or fundamental.
Guys over here.
And now I think it's pretty apparent to everybody, the city does not operate if IT is not operating. And that has really changed how people perceive us. And it gives us, combined with some of the stuff coming from the federal government around security, really a lot of leverage to do what's right. So in Denver, we have, I think, 53 different case management systems to talk about sprawl. We probably need about 3 or 4. I mean, the GL management system, probably that's unique enough that it could be its own thing and that kind of stuff. But generally speaking, we should be able to use that as leverage and sort of take the mantra of yesterday's best practice is today's negligence, right? So yesterday, it was a good idea to do a lot of this stuff. But today, if you're not doing this stuff, you're being negligent and you're putting your city at risk or your government at risk or whatever it is. And you're not going to be able to operate anything in the city. And you're seeing that this year in Dallas, just got hit a couple of weeks ago, Oakland earlier this year, Modesto, California, San Bernardino paid a big ransom. Like it's about once a week, a city's being brought down. And when that city's brought down, they can't deliver justice. They can't do their criminal justice system. It doesn't work. So that understanding of the integration between technology and operations has really become elevated as a result of the pandemic and people understanding what technology can do and how important it is. And that gives us the leverage to do what's right, even though it's tough. It's a tough conversation with other city leaders to say, you're only going to be able to have 80% of what you need because I can't let you use the thing that would give you 100% because it's going to expose us too much.
Yeah, it's a painful conversation always.
Yeah.
I agree fully with what both of you said. And I think I'll just add that, this is the end of the public health emergency, right? Which provided sort of multiple benefits to folks who were in need. And I think that for me is sort of a pressing challenge and opportunity, right? Understanding that for many people, you're not just using one kind of benefit or system of government, right? You're using multiple. And so that integration, that experience of government really matters because, I'm not just getting unemployment insurance, I'm also getting food stamps and, temporary aid and, things like that. And so making sure that we've got systems that think about people as opposed to systems that think about the business, I think it is really crucial. And then in that, as this massive amount of funding comes down for broadband, access is everything, right? I think before the pandemic, we were like, yeah, the internet's cool. Like everybody needs it, right? And now it's like, you need this to be alive. You need this to thrive in society, to do business, to engage in healthcare, right? You cannot be a constituent in Colorado without access to the internet anymore. And it's, becoming unacceptable. And so that's really exciting to start thinking about, we had that same transition with electricity and telephones, right? It's like, it's not a novelty, it's a necessity. And now we have the opportunity to really deploy that. Confluence with a shortage in construction jobs. It should be interesting, and a competition with 50 other states getting $1 billion or more. So, it's an interesting challenge, but for me, access really is sort of what has come out of this.
Those are phenomenal thoughts. They're phenomenal thoughts, and they're dead on target. I mean, it's you mentioned telephone and electricity and an adaptation of that. It's now it's a matter of survival. It's absolutely what you need.
Thanks for listening, and thank you to our guests, David Ettinger, Dusty Dizelle, and Julia Richmond. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Caracast, and be sure to listen to our other discussions. If you'd like more information on how Carasoft can assist your organization, please visit www.carasoft.com or email us at slgmarketing@carasoft.com. Thanks again for listening, and have a great day.